In 1997, a young Norwegian researcher named Geir Jordet began asking a simple but revolutionary question. What separates good footballers from the truly great ones? Armed with just a notebook, a VCR, and hours of match footage, Jordet began documenting something no one was talking about back then: scanning. That subtle, constant checking of a player's surroundings before the ball even arrives at their feet. Fast forward to today, and this one skill, rooted in decades of research, has become the secret weapon of football's biggest stars. So what is scanning? How does it shape the game? And most importantly, how can it make you a better player? Let's dive into the science and history of scanning and uncover how it's revolutionizing football at every level. When Geir Jordet began recording Premier League players some 2 decades ago, there was one player out of 117 that he watched that stood out to him. That was Chelsea's Frank Lampard. A scan can be defined as when a player temporarily takes their eyes off the ball to prepare for actions when on the ball. And Lampard was doing this more often than any of the other 116 players Jordet watched. In the 10 seconds before receiving the ball, Lampard was scanning an average of 6.2 times, an incredibly high amount.
And I follow Frank Lampard for 90 minutes. So then what you see with him is, he was amazing at this.
This habit was no doubt ingrained in Lampard at an early age. He tells the story of how his dad used to sit in the stands when he was playing for West Ham Academy. Pictures, and yell at Frank, always reminding him to check his shoulders, taking snapshots of his surroundings. Since Jordet's initial research on the topic of scanning, there have been over 10 scientific papers published and another 25 student theses and dissertations. These studies have come to some pretty amazing conclusions. A higher scan rate is linked with both higher pass completion and an increase in progressive forward passes. In other words, if you scan more, you're more likely to keep hold of the ball for your team, while also making more successful, dangerous forward passes. But Jordet noticed something else. Any player can turn their head rapidly trying to scan. In fact, many do, but this doesn't always help them. Scan at the wrong moment when a ball is being touched or kicked. You could miss vital information about the speed and direction of the ball and end up making mistakes.
Because when the ball is being touched by a player, then the ball will typically, change direction, change speed, it will stop, it will be passed and so forth. So that particular moment when the ball is touched, it's incredibly important to look at the ball. But that also means that in between those moments, so when the ball is being in between touches, when a player has the ball, or when the ball is heading from player A to player B, this is a time where you don't really need to look at the ball because there's nothing interesting, nothing new happening with the ball. So at that point, look away from the ball. And if you look at top players, and they're probably not aware of this, they're like a clock. It's like a metronome. Like they look at the ball when the ball is being touched and they look away from the ball between touch.
If you look at the best players in the world, they have an incredible timing to their scans, making sure to look away from the ball only in those moments where the ball is already in transition, either after a touch has been taken or after a pass has been made. During the World Cup final between Argentina and France, we spent the entire game recording the details of every single Lionel Messi scan. Messi recorded a total of 676 scans during the final, scanning at an average rate of 3.4 times every time before receiving the ball. For a forward, those numbers are exceptional and way above that of your typical Premier League striker. But compared to some of the world's best central midfielders, they're still a way off. What sets Messi apart from most, though, is the quality and speed of his scans. His scan timing is absolutely flawless, while he also has an ability to scan and gather information at a rate much faster than others. Here we see Messi a few milliseconds ahead of Upamecano in his scanning. It's only fractions different, but in a game of fine margins, it's these details that can make all the difference. Another player who excelled in this area is former Juventus man Andrea Pirlo. Pirlo's scanning ability was legendary, and it played a huge role in his effortless control of games. His teammates often described how he barely needed to communicate verbally. His constant head movements allowed him to dictate the game silently. This story of a hilarious training ground encounter between Pirlo and his former AC Milan teammate Kevin Prince Boateng perfectly illustrates this.
So I come to practice and I was like, hey, pass me the ball. Pirlo, after 1 week, he takes me on the other side. He gets one player who speaks English to translate. He said, tell him Do not shout. If you shout, even the opponent knows he's free. If he's free, tell him I will see him.
Pirlo himself spoke about this in his autobiography, I Think, Therefore I Play, where he explained how he understood there is a secret. Rather than looking downfield at his forwards directly, he would instead focus on the space between him and them. He compared his way of seeing the game to a chess grandmaster, always anticipating moves before they happened. By taking in this information at the correct moments, players like Pirlo and Messi set themselves up for success when on the ball. It allows them to see a pressing opponent, get their body in the right shape to turn, or know exactly where to play their next pass. A skill which, according to Cesc Fabregas, is absolutely essential.
The most important thing in football is to know your next pass.
Fabregas wasn't a bad scanner either. In fact, he holds the record for the second highest scan rate ever recorded during Professor Jordet's research, averaging 7.6 scans each time before he received the ball. There's only one man that comes out ahead of him, and that's his former Spanish teammate, Xavi Hernandez, who once averaged an incredible 8.3 scans before receiving the ball in one game. As a young player, Xavi has spoken about being scared of the physically superior players around him, who were much bigger and much stronger. So his way of making sure they couldn't touch him was to always know where they were coming from. This scanning habit stuck, and even earned Xavi the nickname the Exorcist Girl. I don't turn my head 360 degrees like her, Xavi said, but there are games where I have rotated it more than 500 times. It's like an obsession. Not everyone is like Xavi though. Even at the highest level of the game, there are still plenty of top players who fail to scan. Just take a look at Joelinton getting pickpocketed in Newcastle's 1-1 draw with Man City back in September, with the Brazilian failing to see the pressing Savinho coming in from behind. And then take this Netherlands goal from the World Cup back in 2022. Before the cross is even made, every single defending player is caught ball watching. They all fail to see Dumfries at the back post, allowing him to tap in the cross for an easy goal. These mistakes aren't isolated incidents either. A study on the 2020 European Championship found that 38% of all goals conceded stemmed from poor awareness, whether due to a closed body shape, a failure to scan the field, or simply losing track of an opponent. So it's clear that scanning is a skill that the world's best players execute better than most. But how much information do players actually take in when they scan? According to some of Professor Jordet's studies, most scans only last for around half a second. Jordet has even said that from a single scan, you're probably not typically picking up the whole pitch. What you're seeing is probably more what you would call proximal information, so just information immediately around you. You'll probably pick up colours, a teammate, an opponent, and you'll definitely see someone here and an opening there. But then of course, these players don't just do one scan, they typically do more scans, so they see pictures seaming together, so they get a bigger feel for what's happening around them. Something that can also help massively in completing this picture for players is the very final scan they make before receiving the ball. Often called the critical scan, this usually takes place as the ball is already moving towards a player, and it allows them to complete one final snapshot of what's around with the most up-to-date information before making their next decision. This skill is an exceptionally hard one to master, and one that many players at the top level still fail to execute properly. To give you an example of how the critical scan can provide players with the most up-to-date information, helping to inform their decision-making, take a look at this clip of Van Dijk. In this situation, Van Dijk was all set to play a pass here to his teammate, but he performs a critical scan as the ball is moving towards him and spots this Atletico player already running at high speed about to press. Using this information, he changes his decision and decides to play a ball over the top of this player, bypassing the press and helping Liverpool to launch an attack. Some players are far more gifted than others at this skill. Zidane was an absolute master at it, often still able to perform a critical scan even when the ball was flying towards him out of the air. While in more recent times, players like Martin Ødegaard have shown just how adept they are at it, with the Norwegian even managing to pull off a double critical scan for this assist against Brighton last season. By 2017, Gaia Jordet's research had gained worldwide recognition, including the attention of Arsenal manager Arsene Wenger.
How do I call that? And I call that scanning. And I try to see what happens to a player in the 10 seconds before he gets the ball. And we made a complete study with Norwegian University. And in fact, what is very interesting is that the good players, the very good players, scan 6 to 8 times in the last 10 seconds before they get the ball.
During his final season as Arsenal manager, Wenger invited Jordi to study scanning at Arsenal. Jordi would go on to film every single home game, analysing 27 players in total and covering over 10,000 ball possessions. The research uncovered a robust link between scanning and performance, resulting in Wenger adopting more scanning drills and practices in training. But what does scanning training actually look like? There are many drills that can help to improve scanning at the team level or indeed with just 2 or 3 other players, but we'll save sharing those for another video. If you're like many young players out there, you probably spend a large amount of time training alone and only have a limited amount of time that you can dedicate to certain areas of your game. So we want to provide you with solutions that are both effective and conscious of your time. One super easy way to first start building a scanning habit is to just simply start scanning before and after every pass. If you look at Tottenham star Heung-min Son, he still does this in warm-ups even to this day, making sure that scanning is top of mind and constantly practiced. Another option is the tool that we've spent over 5 years developing here at Be Your Best, that's used by thousands of pro and amateur players and clubs all around the world, from Borussia Dortmund to Wolves to Martin Odegaard to Romeo Lavia. Be Your Best is virtual reality football training designed to improve your scanning, vision, decision-making, and all-round game intelligence skills. It enables players to practice their scanning in thousands of scenarios recreated from professional games. Last season, during a defensive injury crisis, Real Madrid called upon their central midfielder Aurelien Tchouameni to fill in at centre-back during an away game against Osasuna. Tchouameni posted a video on his TikTok before the game of him preparing for the match by training in VR. He was playing through scenarios from the perspective of a central defender, priming himself for typical situations he might find himself in during the 90 minutes. Real Madrid went on to win the game 3-0, with Tchouameni putting in a man-of-the-match performance at centre-back. The product has also been used successfully by many teams, one of them being the German under-17 national team a few years back before their European Championship victory. The players trained in VR over a period of 9 weeks prior to the tournament before going on to win the championships. A study conducted during their use found that the players who trained with Be Your Best had improved their scan rate by an impressive 28%. Now, we're not promising that this will transform your game or turn you into Messi, Lampard, or many of the other great scanners who are featured in this video. But if you use Be Your Best regularly and commit to the training, it will give you those marginal percentage gains that can make all the difference at the very top level. To get started, you just need to own a MetaQuest VR headset. The models that we currently support are the Quest 2, 3 or 3S. You can then go to beyourbest.com where you can create an account, choose your membership and download the app to your headset. Thank you for joining us for this video. We will see you next time.